Ready? Okay. 7 o'clock, so I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville on Tuesday, August 26, 2014, at 7 o'clock PM in the council chambers, and we'll start with roll call.
Mike Den,
Here.
Barbara Doss,
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen,
Here.
Dick Bonin,
Here.
Ken Killian,
Here.
Eileen Nichols,
Here.
and Amy Seabold Wilson. Here.
First item is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer a separate discussion and action. A is minutes of the August 12th regular council meeting and also the July 15th special council meeting, and you will remember that we asked for that to be brought back because Councilor Killian had asked for some changes, so that's in the packet. B is payment of bills. C is appointments to boards and commissions. I have none this evening. Licenses, we have a Class A beer and liquor license for Julie G. Leffelhos for premises at 110 West Main Street. We have a temporary Class B beer license for the Platteville J.C.'s at Legion Park for Dairy Days, September 4th through the 7th. And in your packet, there are 1 and/or 2-year operator's licenses listed. Under permits, we have a banner permit for the UW Platteville Homecoming, which occurs October 1st through the 12th. I'm sorry, that banner would be hung from October 1st through the 12th, and the banner permit for the Platteville Elks Lodge on September 8th through the 17th. Any questions, or otherwise I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar. Second.
I have just a small edit for the minutes. I was excused.
off the-
Absent. Sorry.
If you would like to make a change, we are to exclude that from the motion, and then we would
Go
make
back,
the
okay.
change. Yep, so with the first, the 12th meeting, you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Is it all right with the person who made the motion to exclude the August 12th minutes from your motion?
Right,
That way
I
we
would
can
just
come
make
back.
a simple change and she wants to be excused,
Okay
right?
with you as well, Mike? That we'll bring that back. We'll discuss that afterwards. Okay, so absent the August 12th minutes, we'll vote on the motion.
Oh, I just have a question. I was not here for the July meeting where the minutes were changed. I'm just wondering if council people have read and reviewed the change that is proposed in red in your minutes. I wasn't here, so I don't know I don't know what was done. I just know that when I read through these, there was red, and then there was a line out through some of the red. So
Right,
I'm
and
trying to
that-
figure out.
Yeah, and we did discuss that, and I did read them through, and I believe it's correct, so. So we'll vote on the motion, which excludes the August 12th minutes.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes,
Seabold Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
all right. Amy, if you'd like to make a motion with the recommended change?
Yeah, I would just like to change the August 12th minutes to acknowledge that I was not absent unintentionally. I was excused. Small change.
Need a second?
Need a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and I do recall too that I had said that she was gone and was excused, so. All right, we'll vote on that motion.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seabold Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, and we have 2 this evening. First is Ryan Hedinger, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Ryan, with a summer Main Street update, and if you will come up to the microphone and give your name, please, and your address.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Hedinger and my address is 1150 Fox Ridge Road, apartment number 9 in Platteville. And I just stopped by to give everyone an update on my summer internship with Jack Ledke and the Main Street program funded by PACE. I'm a university student in the renewable energy program, and over the summer I worked to help businesses apply for folks on energy incentives to update their lighting. And it's been a successful summer. We've completed 9 building installs, and the average savings that the business owners saw up front was about $1,700, with the average cost of installation being about $2,000. And with the program that we did, we gave the 9 buildings updated lighting systems, and they're projected to save $5,022 collectively each year on top of that. And I am working to facilitate having this program be done every year, so students can work up and down Main Street to help the small business owners save electricity and update their businesses at reduced cost to them. And although my term is ending over the summer, we still have projects available. So if any businesses are interested, they can contact Jack Ludke with the Main Street office. And we hope to have continued effort to save businesses on Platteville money. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Next is Christina Curris, the university update on the tornado.
So I'm Christina Kurz from 1490 Deborah Court, and just an update of the last 71 days since the tornado. We're just 2.5 days from most of the residence halls opening this Friday for move-in. In the tornado, over 400 residence hall rooms were damaged and needed to be stripped down and rebuilt. Most of those have all been turned over, and tomorrow the last few are supposed to be turned over so that they will all be ready on Friday for move-in. So that was successful. Engineering Hall also had a fair amount of damage. That is not completely repaired, but it is occupied again. The faculty there, most classrooms will be usable. This recent rain, apparently they're finalizing a few details. The south wall, if you've driven by, still has a lot of plywood, and that is going to be an ongoing project that has not been finished, but the building will be usable. Memorial Park, about 1,000 trees were logged from Memorial Park from this, so it was very significant. Parts of Memorial Park are open again for use. The rugby field, the basketball courts, the parking lot, the Prairie Trail on the south side of the creek, and then across Southwest Road, the trail that connects to the rest of the PCA trails, those are reopened. Flat part of Memorial Park with the pavilion and a lot of the other areas there are still closed. Parts of the disc golf course are open and parts are closed off. We're working right now with Professor to get a map online that will show specifically what areas are open and what areas are closed. They are signed. There are still tickets being given for being in the closed areas because some of it is still dangerous. So parts are open, but parts are still closed. The stadium, the lights are being installed right now. The turf, it was being removed yesterday and today. It should probably be all removed by now, and then the reinstallation will be beginning. If the weather cooperates, it should be ready to go by September 8th, so that First UW Platteville football home game on September 13th can be held there, and then all other events will also return there after the 8th. So that is on track. And then finally, reopening ceremony. Ray Cross, the president of UW System, will be coming down on Friday. There will be a reopening ceremony, a brief one, because it's move-in day and all kinds of other stuff going on in the engineering hall on the back side near the engineering hall parking lot, kind of the part that faces the other residence halls. If anyone is interested in attending that ceremony, it's again 11:30 Friday, engineering hall. We would recommend parking over by the student center and walking across, because with residence hall move-in, there will be lines of cars of people moving all of their stuff in. And at last count, and we're still tallying the hours, more than 12,000 staff hours have been put in towards the tornado recovery process. But we are ready. So, any questions?
Sounds like all good news.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are the only public comments we have. In your packet, there are reports. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, it's over here.
Oh.
Didn't even notice, sorry about that.
All right, Jason, if you'd like to go up and.
My name is Jason J. Clovening. I live at 127 Pine Grove. And I would just like to give a short, brief presentation. I know that people volunteer to be on commissions all the time. I want to just make the council aware I'm openly volunteering to be on the airport commission. I know the nominations come up in November, so I felt like this meeting would give you ample time to think about this. As of current, the members that are on the board, there is one person that actually has a pilot's license that's valid. There's one person that owns an airplane that is not airworthy. And the statute which establishes the Airport Commission is 114.4 by the state, which states that people especially interested in aeronautics should be on the board. I have an airplane. I have a private pilot's license that is active. I have an instrument rating. I own a hangar. Last year, I flew the airplane out to Dulles and went to the Smithsonian, down to Kitty Hawk, around to Atlanta and back home, totaling at least 2,400 miles, in addition to going to most of the home Packer games. I'm out at the airport just about every day, and I am intimately involved in knowing kind of what goes on over there. I know I put my name in last year, and the president resigned, so I knew there was an opening, and unfortunately I didn't get appointed. So I'd just like to formally put my name forth again to potentially get on the Airport Commission, as I think I have a little bit more of a vested interest in making sure that the airport runs smoothly than potentially some of the people that are currently on the board. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll make sure it gets filed.
That's it for citizens' comments. All right. We'll go on to reports in your packet. The Historic Preservation Commission, Killian?
Yes, you have minutes in the packet, and at the bottom of the first page of the minutes, it talks about sign guidelines standards. And really, we want those labeled as guidelines, not standards. Those have been completed. A lot of work has been put in by Joe Carroll and by the commission. And it says here on the bottom that suggested to include pictures, and many pictures were put in by Joe Carroll. And it makes it a very nice publication that can be given out to people that want to put up signage in the commercial historic district. So I thank Joe very much for his work, and the commission.
All right. Library Board, your minutes are in the packet. Water and Sewer Commission, Bonin and Stockhausen. Anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. Fire and Rec Committee, Stockhausen.
Nothing.
Forestry Parks and Recreation Committee, Seaboth Wilson.
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add, okay. Other reports in the packet include the Building Inspector's Report, Department Progress Reports, and the 2013 Single Audit Report. Are there any questions or comments on any of those reports? All right, hearing none, we'll go on to the first action item, which is Contract 1514, Street Repairs and Maintenance. Howard.
Thank you. Common Council allocated $200,000 towards street maintenance. We solicited bids for a 3/4 inch overlay, as we've done in the past. Back in July, we opened the one bid from Iverson Construction for this work, and staff recommends award of contract 15-14, street repairs and maintenance, to Iverson Construction for the bid price of $145,293. And the list of the streets to be used for that overlay is included in your packet.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. This is the list said, list to be considered. Will all of the streets on that list be completed?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just to consider. It
Yeah.
says streets to consider for thin overlay, and so I was confused as to whether you just started working down those and then eventually stopped, or if it was all of those.
Yes, the bid price, the idea is that I put those in, and depending on how the bids come in, if we don't have enough budget to do all of them, then we cut it off from the bottom. But the bid prices came in about where I expected, so we will be able to do all of them.
Other questions? Need a motion?
I move to accept the bid of Iverson Construction for $145,293.
Second it.
I have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Bonin?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes,
Nichols?
Yes.
Seabolt Wilson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item is the contract 914, TID number 5 bike trail.
Okay, we discussed this last time. Common Council originally budgeted $75,000 towards the completion of a trail that would go from the north side of Keystone Parkway up to Progressive Parkway. It would start where the current developer trail ends at Keystone Parkway and go up between the Menards and Walmart buildings on the Walmart side of the property line all the way up to Progressive Parkway, so that people could use the existing trails and the moving Platteville Outdoors Trail to go to those shopping centers. Walmart provided the easement and $24,000 towards the construction. The Keystone developer will be providing $18,550 plus an easement across a portion of his land in the back, and the remainder was budgeted as a TIF 5 expense. We opened 3 bids. The lowest bid was Iowa Grant Trucking for $90,553, which is $15,553 more than what was originally budgeted. Council did ask for additional information. Traffic control and landscaping are the main items that appear to be over the engineering estimate for the project. For example, on this project, there was $5,000 lump sum bid for traffic control, while the entire Broadway project for this year was $3,000 for traffic control. Landscaping was listed at $4 a square yard, where Broadway was listed at $3.10. As I say here, these 2 items alone make up over $6,000 more than the estimate. If all the unit prices other than mobilization were the same as on the Broadway project, the bid would be just under the budget. Staff feels that if this project is bid out in the spring in conjunction with another project, it is very likely that unit prices could be lower. If asphalt prices go up dramatically, then all bets are off. That would be the only other caveat for that. And so there are 2 possible courses of action. Award the bid to Iowa Grant Trucking for the bid of $90,553, and this additional amount can be paid for from the TIF 5 fund balance. There is a memo from the finance department that explains some possible sources of money for this project, but we're saying that if no payments are made in 2014 for the Moving Platteville Outdoors Trail project, there would be sufficient fund balance to cover this project. The other possible course of action would be to reject all bids and direct staff to rebid the project in spring of 2015.
I'd like to make a motion that we reject all bids and direct staff to rebid the project in the spring in conjunction with the other projects.
Second.
Second.
I have some questions. Howard, can you tell me what traffic control is that is bid at $5,000 as a lump sum? I mean, is there a way to accept this bid and not accept some of these costly items? I mean, what is traffic control? Is this putting lines on the pavement for a crosswalk?
No, what traffic control are to pay for the rental of the signs that talk about road closed ahead and sidewalks closed and different project signs to identify that there's a project in place and to warn drivers and pedestrians of the project. To answer the other question, there is no way that we can accept a partial bid. We can't accept all of these bid items and not a different bid item. quite frankly, what ends up happening is a lot of times contractors use some of these items, and they identify those items where they think they can put a little bit of money
Kind of
in for
pad their
profit.
bid.
Pad the bid for a profit, and if we accept it, then that's the way it is.
I also just have another question about the terminology used. You said if all the unit prices except mobilization. What is that, just starting the project?
One of the bid items that we normally put into a project is what we call mobilization, which is to move the people and equipment and supplies from their home base to the project site. A lot of times there's a job trailer involved. If it's a large job, there's a job trailer involved. There's other things. And what we try to do with that is we break it out so that they don't hide those costs. They are legitimate costs, but we do that so that we don't have the contractor necessarily hide those costs in with unit prices for water main or asphalt tonnage or something like that. We separate that out. And what I meant by this mobilization is it costs more to mobilize for the Broadway Street project than it ever would to do this. So I just wanted to make
Oh, so
sure
you
that we.
want- I see. I couldn't tell from your comment if in fact the mobilization was excessive on this as well as the traffic control and landscaping. But it appears that that is not the case.
Correct.
I have a question as well about ADA compliance. So, if I recall correctly, there was a concern previously about the Belmont Trail needing us to redo the switchback because it wasn't ADA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But we're not
About a week-
doing that now, right?
About a week ago, we had a conference call with the DNR, and because of the Moving Platteville Outdoors project, they understand that the Moving Platteville Outdoors Trail is a handicapped accessible, will be a handicapped accessible trail that will connect to handicapped accessible sidewalks. If not at Mineral Street, then definitely at the Chestnut Street Bridge.
Okay.
So they're discounting, they were trying to find a handicapped accessible place that they could end their trail. And they were saying that if the Moving Platteville Outdoors Trail was not going to be ready, then they would had to make that other trail, that developer trail, handicapped accessible, which possibly could have moved the end point of that trail.
Okay.
And I didn't want to have that trail move and ours trying to catch up with it.
So this proposal, this bid here, didn't change the ADA compliance because we're still assuming the Moving Platteville
The Moving
Will-
Platteville
will-
Outdoors,
will do that.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
My last question is, by rejecting all bids at this time, do we in any way jeopardize the funding that is being provided by Walmart and/or by the developer?
We have received the money from Walmart right now. I don't know if they have any stipulations on this. If they are upset with us, they may ask us for the money back, but I haven't heard any rumblings like that.
Does that go for the developer as well? Is that what you said Walmart, did you?
Walmart
Right.
had a development agreement when it was built that it would give the funds to the city of Platteville for the trail.
Okay, and then the easement?
Yes.
The easement was already documented and recorded at the time,
We have that no matter what.
yes.
Any other questions? Otherwise, our motion is to reject all bids and direct staff to rebid the project in 2015. We'll vote.
Den,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
No.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, next item is the Kallenbach housing bids. You have in your packet the list of the houses that we solicited bids on. I know that there's a lot of information that has been given to us, and my belief and understanding is that depending on how this portion of the meeting goes, that if we do make motions, the request would be that they are made on each individual property. Is that correct, Larry?
Yes, that's our recommendation from our attorney.
I did talk to Amy before the meeting, and she did have some questions. She was gone for the last meeting, so I would like to give her this opportunity to make comments because she was not at the last meeting. Barb Dawes was also not at the last meeting, so if you'd like to make any comments before we start the discussion on each individual property, or whichever way we go, and Dick, if you'd like to say something too, that's fine.
I'd like to make a comment before we start.
Okay, is it all right if Amy and Barb go first, or do you have something to say?
Mine's just real short. I
Okay,
just would like to see when we're done with this, that we go down the line, each one of us. Speak out about which ones, just our opinions on them,
okay,
so that we don't have a whole bunch of people trying to talk at once.
good idea.
Oh.
Okay,
But we'll go ahead first with staff or whatever we got here.
well, we're gonna start with Amy and then Barb.
Okay. Well, first, I missed the last meeting, so I'm going to be a little redundant here probably. But I want to say I am so excited that we have over 90 responses on our RFPs, which is really, it speaks well to the fact that people want to develop in Platteville, and that means money to Platteville. So I just wanted to point out that that is very exciting. The next point that I wanted to bring up is when I was reviewing the RFP, in the RFP we say that we are going to be ranking each of the proposals based upon a numeric point system. So when you read the RFP, we actually promised that we would be ranking each and every one of those 90 proposals based upon the A, B, C, and D categories with some bonus points. So A was project description and use, property use, which was 30 points. Home design was 30 points. Bidder capacity and experience was 30 points. Bid amounts was 10 points. And then bonus points were up to an additional 10 points each. So when we put together the RFP, we basically were telling the applicants that we would be evaluating their proposals numerically and consistently. So my question, I guess, to the council is, have we actually gone through all 90 applicants, each of us individually, and ranked them each consistently? Because I believe that's what we've promised to people that we would do if we as a council wanted to be responsible for evaluating. Looks like Ken Killian did. Did you?
I did some of these, I didn't finish filling out the form.
Okay.
Did you all get the form?
Yeah, Larry sent a form yesterday by email that we could use to fill in our numeric rankings for each of the 90 applications. So my proposal is that if we did not individually rank them, I would ask that we'd bump it back 2 more weeks and ask a committee of city staff, 3 to 5 of you guys, to consistently rank them, because that, in my opinion, should be consistent and clear. We owe it to the residents and the people who applied that we show consistency in how we're evaluating all 90 of these applications.
I agree with that. I think 7 council members are gonna come up with quite a range ranking, and since all, 90 are being asked for, I think a smaller group should go ahead and do it, and then bring it to the council.
May I?
Barb?
When I unfortunately had to be out of town on personal business the last meeting, and when I came back, I was told that my job was just to look at them and bring my top 3 for each one, which you just pick your top 3. So then yesterday afternoon late, just prior to having 2 or 3 meetings, I got a spreadsheet that said, now fill in this spreadsheet and rank them by number. Well, because I worked last night and I worked all day today, I couldn't do that. So I'm not prepared to do that. I am prepared to say that there was a part of the RFP that said if the if the bid did not come to the base bid for the property, that it wouldn't be considered. So I am prepared to say.
Actually, I think it said that they still could be considered.
Well, they could be considered, but they would, I mean, it would have to be an overwhelm. And from the cursory look that I looked at them, it appeared that there are many qualified bidders. The other thing that I wondered is, we asked for references, and I would like to know if city staff followed up on any of the references. We did request references. If we request references, it would seem to me that we would use that information. So my question then is not only in the ranking by, I mean, you can rank on paper, but what about the reference checking?
So I guess that's what I would ask, that it goes back to city staff, and maybe references need not be checked for all of them, but the ones that rank the highest.
Right.
And then it's not all 7 council members checking references, but there's a united, consistent effort of reference checking, so we're not duplicating effort.
I agree. With that in mind, I'd actually make a motion to table this
I'll second that.
until the next meeting. And I would suggest that a smaller group be assigned the task of doing this. I would not mind that being a combination of city staff and council members if there are a couple council members that want to be involved.
So do you want to make that part of your motion? Because if we want to get something done by the next meeting,
Right.
we really need to delineate.
No more than
Which
5
council
people.
member-
No more than 5 people, and I would say up to 2 council people.
So we have a motion and a second that we would table this with the idea that there would be up to 5 people on a committee that would rank all 90 applications according to the point system that was given. And then that report would be brought back at our next meeting for action. Okay. Our council members, is that understandable to everyone, that that might be an acceptable way to proceed with this?
Is the president of the council going to appoint then? The two
I would
council
suggest
members?
that right now we look at volunteers, because if they don't get appointed tonight, that it will not happen. I don't know if anybody besides Mike is interested in
I'd be
volunteering.
happy to, Eileen, if.
Well, you wrote the,
We have Amy and Mike so far that have indicated interest to sit in on ranking all 90 applications.
Don't you think that we've drugged this on long enough? I think tonight we should be unloading these houses to the people that done the bidding. And this is foolishness, because we got other stuff to work on, and we don't need to be sitting around working on who's gonna do what with these houses. Let's get rid of them,
Dick,
period.
Actually, I think
I know
a
what you
motion
did,
to
Mike,
table
and-
is
It's not
non-debatable.
it's
I'm
non-debatable.
sorry, I should have said a motion to table is non-debatable. We now have a motion and a second to table. We will vote.
Den,
Yes,
Doss,
Yes.
Stackhausen,
yes,
Bonin,
No,
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, it's been noted that at least a couple of council people have expressed interest, and city staff will discuss the other 3 to be involved.
Are those the 2 council members you'd like involved then, as a group? Okay. We would like to do it the Tuesday after Memorial Day, if we can.
Labor Day.
Excuse me, after Labor Day.
Okay, you
Memorial
can
Day would be great.
email out that and check schedules.
Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully you guys are available.
And we can come
Right.
having ranked them
Want it?
before the meeting.
is that an open meeting or is that a closed meeting?
It's not legally required to be open, but,
Okay.
I really don't care. I mean, if people wanna come
We're
in and
talking
listen.
development. but if
Oh,
you want
right,
for
we're
it to
talking
be-
individual, jobs, individual companies. We don't want, negatively impact anybody's company, their reputation. So I would definitely say
It's
that
not
it should
required to open that meeting.
be, no.
That's all my
We
question
should, we
is.
should keep it confidential. We don't wanna,
And that's for the
Yeah.
sake of the bidders.
yeah. From
Also-
staff, it's gonna be the city attorney, the city planner, and myself.
It's also for the benefit of the people that are doing the evaluation, to
Okay.
be able to speak frankly and evaluate honestly and give their honest thoughts of what the proposals are. In terms of
It was
ranking.
just clarification.
Okay.
I just want a clarification.
Congratulations, you were appointed.
So we have a motion on the table?
And
No.
we just
It's all done.
voted, it's non-debatable, so we just voted.
Okay.
Yep, yep. so. Okay, and I understand there are probably people in the audience tonight who were expecting us to make a decision. I think it certainly would have been great if we could, but we'd rather err on the side of,
But we will have an
Caution.
answer at the next council meeting?
yep, it's being brought at the next council meeting. All right, under information and discussion. The first item is public transportation hours and schedule, taxi and shuttle.
Okay. Last time we had a citizen comment regarding public transportation here in Platteville. Just want to clarify some things here. Currently, there is a shared ride taxi system in Platteville. It is partially funded by the fares. The remainder of the cost of the service is subsidized by federal, state, and city tax dollars. There is another taxi system that is completely funded by fare revenues. The University of Wisconsin-Platteville instituted a shuttle bus service primarily to serve students, but it is also open to the public. The cost of the service is funded from student fees and from the occasional public rider fares. The city and the university staff determined that both systems may be combined into a single transportation system in Platteville, and if they were combined, they would be eligible for federal and state subsidies. The DOT funded a study with an 80% grant to look at the feasibility of combining these systems. The remaining 20% share was split between city and university, and the study was conducted by Southwest Regional Planning. At the August 12th meeting, Southwest Regional Planning presented the preliminary findings of that study, and they've also presented the findings to university stakeholders. And the findings show that it is feasible to combine the systems to improve public transportation here in Platteville, and there are two basic scenarios with modifications to each. One is to combine the two systems, keeping the level of service the same as it is now, receive additional federal and state tax-funded subsidies to reduce the tax burden and the tax subsidies on city taxes and reduce the amount of student fees necessary to support the system. If we were to go for maximum savings, that maximum savings could be just under $91,000. And we would assume that that would be allocated to the city and university as agreed upon by the council and the university. The other side of the spectrum is you could combine the two systems, keep the funding level of the city and the university the same as it is in 2014, leverage that local funding to increase the service levels for the combined system. It would allow the shuttle bus to have additional stops that may be more convenient for city residents. It could allow the taxi to expand their hours, and especially on Sunday afternoon. And then there's obviously the combination, one side of the spectrum to the other. Staff is in the process of developing a request for proposal for a renewal of the shared ride taxi system. If we were to combine the two, we would need to include the shuttle in the RFP. Some additional information that has come out since this is that if we were to do so, the shuttle bus could be established, their contract could be established for September. It doesn't have to be established as of January 1st. So that's one nice thing that we could look at, because the current contract with the university runs through the end of the 2014-15 school year. Now, in any case, DOT requires a public hearing before approval of any significant changes to the funding or service levels. Just so that you folks understand what we have the individuals from Southwest Regional Planning here to answer any direct questions about anything that they said at their at the other council meeting, or any other questions that you may have specifically about their study. But the staff recommendation is that you folks give me a consensus agreement to establish September 23rd council meeting as the date of a public hearing to discuss and potentially approve changes to the public transportation system in Platteville. My intent would be that if we were to do this, we would have, in essence, two separate discussions in this public hearing. One would be to look at the taxi system separately and potentially add service hours to the taxi system, especially for Sunday afternoon and evening. The second item that we would want to discuss in that public hearing was whether or not it was in the city's interest to combine the systems and receive the additional tax money from federal and state subsidies to help support both systems.
Questions?
Can I make a comment, and just to start the conversation off? I wanted to point out that I have two roles on this project. That as the sustainability coordinator for the university, I run the city's or the university's shuttle, and I wanted to say that I've been doing that for 2 years now, much longer than before I even knew I was going to run for city council. We started on this project with the city to talk about how we could be partnering on this. And so I did have a conversation with the city attorney, Brian, to confirm that it was okay for me to be a part of discussion as long as we were not taking action on the item tonight. And if I misunderstood that, please let me know, Brian. But when we do take action on this, I plan to recuse myself and not be a part of the conversation that day.
Yeah, we had discussed the point where the council was going to take action, and you indicated that you felt, for various reasons, that you should not participate. I don't disagree with that decision, and so my recommendation to you was, when you decided to recuse yourself, to withdraw from the seat and move to another location.
Thank you.
So your understanding of our conversation is correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, the question I have is that the city periodically has to renew the contract or bid out the contract for the taxi service that we have currently.
That's
Are
correct.
we at the end of a contract time, or is
Yes.
this? We are, okay, so it would expire January 1, or?
Technically, it expires December 31st, 2014.
Okay.
And so I am in the process of putting together the request for proposals in accordance with the DOT's guidelines so that we can bid that out to establish the service starting January 1st.
So it isn't that we're doing this because the shuttle survey was completed, the project was reported, it's because we would be doing it regardless. In
We would be
terms of-
doing the taxi
Correct.
proposals regardless,
Right,
yes.
okay.
Hey, Howard, could you clarify for me again, as I can't remember, do we own the taxis, or does the taxi company own the taxis? And we, in our RFP, specify certain things in terms of their reporting to us, is that correct? Can you kind of review what that RFP is? I know there's a couple new council members, and some of the veterans here don't have.
Okay.
all the recollection they should.
Okay. The issue here is that currently the city owns 3 vehicles that are in use right now. The shared ride taxi service, Top Hat, is the contractor who is that, and they own the sedan that's being used out there right now. We do have a grant in process for an additional minivan that I would hope would replace that sedan, so that all the vehicles would be owned by the city. And we lease those to whoever the provider is.
And when we lease them to the provider, then who, I mean, they pay us a cost,
They pay us a nominal fee of $1 a year for the use of the cab, of the vehicle. They perform all maintenance, they fuel the vehicle, they do all of that. So, yeah.
and they provide records to us that, in
Yes.
fact, the vehicles have been maintained.
Yes.
And do we, I mean, is there a maintenance schedule that we expect, or is there?
It's per manufacturer's specifications for a vehicle of that type under that service condition. Periodically, we and/or Department of Transportation have the authority to go down and review the records, review the actual maintenance. We have not done so lately, but that's,
And the insurance? Is this carried as a city liability insurance, or does the carrier, or the provider, pardon me?
the provider carries the insurance. We designate in the contract the minimum level of insurance that's required. I don't have those numbers with me at this time, but we establish at least the minimums.
My recollection is that we have applied, as you said, for grants to purchase these vehicles, usually. Is that correct?
Yes. We have periodically done so, and as I've stated, we have in the chute, in the hopper right now, there was a grant approved, and we have the purchase order in. I don't know when the delivery will be for that next vehicle, but
And
that's
this is
supposed
for
to
a-
happen this year.
And this is for a minivan or something?
Yes, similar to the other minivans that you see them using out on the road right now.
And is that what the 3 are? Are they all minivans?
Yes, we have 2007 blue one and a 2010, 2011 white ones that were paid. Those 2 were paid for by ARRA funds, the stimulus money.
Oh, stimulus money. Okay.
Board, quick question. If this partnership was to develop, who would operate this program?
Under the DOT's rulings, they deal with the city of Platteville. And because I'm the one that takes care of the taxi, I'm assuming that I would be the one point of contact at the city level for both systems. And then I would work with whoever the university designates as their liaison for the shuttle portion of it.
Would this take us out of the ability to have grants to replace our taxis if we made this partnership?
No.
I was just kind of curious, because I kind of got caught up into, because I wasn't around when part of this came about. It seems to me that, do we want to get involved with another form of transportation that doesn't really do much? I mean, they take kids back and forth on campus. There's a lot of pickups on campus, but very few off campus and from off campus back to campus?
That, to me, that's a question that probably ought to be reserved for the public hearing, for one. The other is that we have the folks from Southwest Regional Planning. They did surveys of the community and the student population, and a lot of the surveys that they've done come to the conclusion that many people in the community do not think that they're allowed to ride the shuttle bus, even though there's been some publicity on that.
It's kind of interesting, because when you get a chance to talk to some of the people that are involved with it, you find out, you know, how much they do and how much they don't do, the shuttles. That's just kind of my point of information.
So, Howard, when you say you're preparing the RFP for the shared taxi, you would be preparing an RFP that would be distributed regionally or whatever to potential people who would want to be the provider under the conditions that we establish. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And so that's for the taxi service. Would the process be the same kind of thing for the shuttle service? So you would, I mean, the RFP would say now somehow we have this bigger vehicle that carries more people and it goes around to places in Platteville. And so you're gonna lease, a provider would lease it for $1 and would need to provide the maintenance, the fuel, and the insurance on it, would need to abide by whatever the regulations are in terms of hours and stops and that kind of thing, and then the city would own the vehicles? Is that, I'm
Well-
just trying to understand how this, well, I mean, that's why I had you kind of explain how the taxi worked, so I could see if that's what the, is that, that kind of?
Yes, the city would end up needing to do a RFP process for a shuttle bus service. Unlike the taxi system, we do not currently own,
Right.
neither we nor the university own the shuttle buses. They're owned by the provider.
Provider.
So initially, our RFP for shuttle bus service would require a provider to
Buses.
provide the buses as well. Now, to get back to Mike's question, as we go forward with this, I would anticipate that we would apply for grants, capital project grants, to replace those shuttles with city-owned shuttle buses in the future, similar to the taxi cab system.
Tell me
The-
what a capital, what did you call it, a capital budget grant?
Yes, we have our own operational budgets, and then we have the CIP, the capital budget.
So you would,
So
you
the
would see
state-
us asking for shuttle buses in the CIP?
Well, there would be a local share, just like there is for a taxi, but there would be a federal and state grant for 80+% of the cost of a shuttle bus, just like they fund a grant for the taxi system. And they have what they call their operational grants to subsidize the operations of the taxi or shuttle bus, and then they also have a capital CIP program, if you will, to pay for CIP projects for buses or taxis or other capital type improvements. That's the only difference, is that we would have to apply separately for a capital grant instead of an operating grant. But we could do that. That's all legal under that system.
A point of clarification, Howard, though, you wouldn't necessarily, the city would not necessarily need to own the shuttles outright ever, right? That's not a requirement of the funding.
No.
So if the city wanted to continue to pay hourly, basically what the university is doing right now, the city could go that way, and then they wouldn't have capital investment, unless they deemed it more fiscally responsible to do the capital investment.
That's a choice. Like you say, there's the operating grant, to operating, for the operating subsidy, and then there's separate capital subsidies, and those are at the council's discretion, whether or not you want us to look at purchasing those. But you're correct, we don't have to purchase those vehicles.
Okay, and right now, my recollection is from the taxi company, we require a certain kind of reporting. The number of people carried, is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, we have a reporting requirement as part of the RFP. So they have to report and reply as to the number of people they're carrying, the fares, the hours they're carrying people. In fact, that way we know if in fact we're operating a taxi at the time when people need a taxi. I also think that we have access in our budget documents to the current amount that we expend in term of operating expenses and what we expect in revenue, what the deficit is, and then how we fill that hole with federal, state, and city tax money. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do we have that similar information for the shuttle service that is being operated?
Like the number of riders?
The operating expense, the operating revenue, the deficit, how the deficit is being, where the funding for the deficit is, and then the riders by, I don't know, Howard's got the kind of, I guess it's probably on some kind of spreadsheet or something.
So a lot of that was included in the report that the Regional Planning Commission did. It's pretty transparent. It's straightforward. It's a lot less complicated than the taxi in many ways. Students pay outright. The students pay $30 a person per year through segregated fees, which is non-government money. It's individual students paying the segregated fee. They pay $30 per year for unlimited rides. And we track the number of people who get on at every stop and who get off at every stop, and we've been doing that for 2 years now. So we have some pretty good ridership data established at this point, which is a really helpful tool, obviously. We did just install technology on the buses going forward that students will be able to swipe their ID, and faculty, staff, and students can swipe an ID, and community members can buy a rider card at the information desk in the university, and I'm working on getting them at a few places in the community too. But community members can buy a card for $30, and they'd also swipe it every time they get on the bus, so it would track community members as well. So yes, we have really good data. There's no deficit really because it's paid for up front, and we're only operating the shuttle for as many hours as we have money for.
Howard,
Does that make sense?
That makes sense from you.
From our
but
standpoint, yep.
From your standpoint, but from a city making an RFP, can we make, can we make that kind of RFP? We'll operate as long as we have money?
I don't think so.
But
I'm just trying to figure out how that works.
No, what we would do is we would use the historic data that has been generated by the system, and we would look at, the provider tells us, through the RFP process that it will cost X amount per hour to operate. We establish service hours, and we just do the multiplication that says, so many hours times so much per hour equals so much for the budget. And then, yes, you have to estimate what fare revenues there may or may not be with a system like that, which would result in a net deficit situation for the shuttle bus, similar to what happens with the taxi. And then at that point, you use the formulas the DOT gives you, and you say, you know, they give you an approximate percentage of that deficit that will be covered by federal and state money, and the remainder is what they call the local share. And the DOT does not care where that local share comes from. You know, and that's one of those things where the city and the university would agree as to how we allocate that local share. The intent from the Southwest Regional Planning was that neither the city nor the university would pay more in local share than what they're doing right now. The university's local share being that student segregated fees.
But wouldn't that be considered operating revenue? Because $30 a student, and so that's kind of the operating revenue. And so if there were any deficit beyond that, wouldn't that be the federal, state, and local share?
So can we phrase this in a really simple way too, real quick, is that 4 or 5 communities in Wisconsin have a fixed route bus, like Platteville. And what they do is they take the segregated fee from the students, just like we're proposing, and they use it to pay the local share. So from like a financial standpoint, Howard's got to run some equations, obviously, but from like an applied standpoint, the university is already committed to paying that local share so that the city would not have any burden, financial burden from it.
Howard, what
Does that answer
happened?
your question?
Okay, well, yes and no. Yes and no.
You come
And
at
that would
it,
be written in a memorandum of understanding so that it wouldn't change with time.
you come at it from different directions to the same place.
Quick question for you, are you guys, quick question for you, Howard. What if we get involved with owning shuttle buses for the university and the grants don't come in as high as we expected them to do? Then who's gonna pay the difference?
I think at that point, you don't provide the service, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna do this if there's a shortfall.
That's the way that I would see it. And that goes back to Amy's point just a little bit ago, is if the city, being the council and city staff, we believe that we want to we want to require the service provider to own the vehicles for the first 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you say, then they need to provide those vehicles. And if it's not working out, there's a problem with the federal subsidies or there's some other problems, we stop what we're doing, they take their vehicles back, and we're back to a taxi system, is the way that I would see it.
One thing I think that if you do some comparisons with ridership, you need to have it broken out for the shuttle of all the pickups and the deliveries that are strictly on campus. Those actually should be null and void in comparing, making this fit. You want to know what happens out into the community and back. That's the important part if we're getting the city involved in this, not what happens just on campus.
And I agree. I think that's very, very, very important in putting on 2 hats here, both the city and the university. This would only work if it serves both the city and the university. And one of the things that the Regional Planning Commission presented at their last meeting was that if we would go forward, we'd consider extending more routes from campus into the broader community so it would meet the needs of more residents in addition to the campus needs. And part of the reason I'm interested in this is because it would meet that broader community need. So more people, whether or not they're affiliated with the university, could theoretically take a bus in town to get to where they need to go on a daily basis. And that would be the only way, in my opinion, that this would work, is if it does meet those broad needs of every resident in the city. And the Regional Planning Commission proposed routes that were within a certain distance of almost every household within the city limits, so that it would meet that need.
Just two things. Number one, I was approached that the taxi people, the stakeholders, were not approached. And if they were, that certainly the drivers were not approached, giving their input, because obviously they're the frontline people when it talks to the riders. And then also we received this email, which I think you did too, from the people that are part of the Commission on Aging. And it doesn't sound like they were part of the conversation as well, the initial conversation before all this was published. And I would require or ask or encourage that these, and the term stakeholders, be involved in the further communication on this. If we want to expand the use of this system. The other thing, and this has a direct bearing on me, so I'll mention it since it comes up. My business is outside the city limits, not far, but many of my elderly clients use the taxi service. Now, I did get response from Amy that said this will not change that opportunity, but I would like to have that written into these proposals, that that's an understanding. So these were just the three things that have come to my observation.
Maybe we can ask the folks from Southwest Regional Planning to address some of the stakeholder
Okay.
things that they've done.
I did not receive the original project until this morning, so please understand that.
Okay. Maybe if I could ask one of you guys to come up.
You want to give your name, please, Troy?
Thank you. My name's Troy Magid, Southwestern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Address is 170 Ridge Avenue here in Platteville. You're correct, Barb. We didn't reach out to either of those organizations. However, we reached out to 2 to 3 senior facilities as well as the senior center itself to go directly to the seniors and to get their input directly. We did bypass the commission. We also didn't talk to the taxi. Our approach, right or wrong, and the day is not done. We could revisit if that's the council's wish. The Public Works Director manages the contract, manages the grants, and the taxis are owned by the city. We believe that interaction would cover that aspect. We do feel very confident with the senior citizen outreach, the number of people we reached. We didn't go to a governmental body or organization. We tried to go directly to the seniors. That being said, if it's the council's wishes that we go to this governing body, we can make the time to do that. But again, we stand by our outreach to the citizens. The senior citizen population, we feel it was pretty thorough, and we have the documentation that we can share with you. I believe we did share with you actually. So.
The only reason I bring up a commission on aging is we have commissions, we have boards, and they need to have a direct link to these types of initiatives. We constantly mention the seniors, and I just feel that these community boards and commissions need to be approached or at least presented the information, and that's why I brought it up. And that's the people that approached me prior to all this information mentioned it to me. So, just so you're aware.
Sure, I appreciate the input. Like I said, we'll wait to hear from our colleagues at the city. We've been working with the Public Works Director, but whomever, if it's your direction that we present to them, we'll make the time to do so. That's important.
I'm really
Thank you.
just commenting.
Okay. And just so that you understand, our RFP for the taxi system does allow them to go within 9 miles of the city limits, as long as either the origin or destination is within the city. So if you're outside the city limits and you're going to the hospital, or you're in the city and you're going to your business, those are all legal, and that'll still be part of our RFP. So that won't change.
Thank you,
Okay.
both of you.
I do think Barb brings up an interesting point in terms of at least making sure that the people who are currently driving the taxis are aware, because I think that they may have information about what hours would be, they may have some input that would be valuable to hear in terms and I don't know anything about really the taxi drivers, if there are 20 of them, or if there are 40 of them, or if there are only 3. I don't really know. But, I mean, since they're at it every day, I'm assuming there's at least 3 or maybe 4, since there are that many vehicles. But it seems like they might have some idea about hours from conversations that they've heard too.
Sure. We haven't discussed that there is another taxi service in Platteville also. Do they also get grant money for their operations?
No,
Okay.
I mentioned it briefly, but they're solely supported by fare revenues.
Thank you.
And there's actually, I think we issued a 3rd taxi license at one point in time, and we're going to. Maybe we did issue a 3rd.
We already did the good plan ban.
Yeah, because there's actually
That's
3
fair,
taxi
Rev.
services in Platteville. One is the shared ride taxi, and then there are 2 that are funded in other ways, whether they're by fares or by donations or however they're funded. But there are actually 3 taxi services in Platteville.
Any other questions or comments? If you look at the memo on the bottom of the first page, the question that's being asked and that we would move forward with this is that we would schedule a public hearing on September 23rd, 2014. It seems like we need to do that because we have a contract that will expire at the end of 2014. So I think with consensus, I would say that is the direction we go.
And I think that the idea of having 2 discussions is good, and I would hope that we would do outreach to citizens who ride the taxi so that they could come in and express their opinion during this time, because I think the public hearing will be on, it's not on whether to combine the 2 services. We have to have a public hearing anyway on the shared ride on the RFP, right? If we're going to expand the hours on Sunday?
If you intend to expand the hours, correct.
Right. So if we even are going to consider expanding hours on Sunday, we need to have a public hearing.
Correct.
So it seems to me like it's a good idea to go ahead and schedule it.
Okay.
So we'll be looking forward to that on September 23rd. Next item on the agenda is the EMS and hospital discussion. You have in your packet information that Brian Allen has put together, talking about city and hospital-based EMS. As the council knows, there have been numerous discussions between council president and pro tem and Brian Allen and the city manager, and also the CEO of the local hospital. And this came about because of a couple of reasons. One is that there is a recognition that the calls that have been for EMF service have increased every year that I've been on the council. And one of the things I was told that it gets to a certain level, it's kind of a tipping point where you should start looking at, is this the best way to provide the service, or should we be looking at perhaps increasing or combining or doing something a little different with the service? And the other thing that also has come up is the possibility of purchasing a 3rd ambulance. We now have 2, and of course the need for a new building. So in the course of all this, we, as a council, said, let's talk to the CEO of the hospital and have a conversation with the hospital to see whether or not they would be interested in becoming the EMS provider. We certainly have not reached any kind of agreement, but we are now at the point where, as you can see on your memorandum, pros and cons of a hospital-based, and it would be paramedic, not initially, but that would be the goal, to make it paramedic service, or a city-based, and again, the goal would be paramedic at some point, or city-based AEMT, which is our current level. There are pros and cons given for each of those. The other thing that did come up in our discussion, besides partnering with the hospital or maintaining it as a city EMS as we now exist, or also a nonprofit EMS, which our EMS used to be. the city took it over at some point. Brian would probably be able to tell me when, but I don't remember what year it was, so.
I believe it was 94.
94, okay. So, after the last discussion with the CEO of the hospital, his request is that if we go any further with this discussion, he would like to know that the council, the full council, is in favor of continuing the discussion. It is not saying that, yes, you're in favor of one over the other. But in order for the hospital to give us an answer as to what they could do or might do, they need to do some projections, financial projections.
Hire some people.
And that will take some effort on their part and have some cost. And his comment was, if the council wants to consider this, just consider it, he would be willing to do that, but he would like to know that that is the council direction at this point. Something would still have to be brought back to the full council. We would have to have a full discussion on that as to whether or not it's the right decision for the city at this time.
Don't you believe that it's probably, the biggest thing is the financial issue of what it might cost the city to have the hospital do this? That's probably one of the biggest things we need to know.
I would agree with that. And in order for us to have that number, the hospital needs to put their numbers together, because obviously if they build a building, that's a cost. You know, if they buy that third ambulance, that's the cost. If they go to paramedic level, that's employees versus a lot of volunteers that we currently have. So, and initially at least they said they would still use volunteers, but at some point, and Barb in our discussions has often brought up, healthcare field is changing a lot. And, you know, what is the best option to give the best service for our residents
For the longest period of time.
and for the surrounding area, because there are townships that also contract with the city of Platteville. Dick?
I would like to know what the pros and cons would be of just the fact that would lose final say if it went to the hospital. Is there, pros and cons of just that aspect of the final say? We're losing it.
I'm not
Final
sure.
say.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you
Final,
mean.
city loses, on the cons, the city loses final say in EMS activities. Now, as far as the city is concerned, what was the pros and cons of us having that happen to us if we do that?
I would say one of the cons, Dick, is that there's no control over fee schedules, and sometimes when you go into a situation like that with it being controlled by the hospital staff, you might see escalated costs for ambulance service because there's nothing it can do. You either pay it or you don't use it.
Brian, would you comment on how reimbursement works for ambulance service? Does reimbursement of your fee have anything to do with how much you charge?
To an extent, private insurance companies will usually pay the cost of an ambulance. Medicare, Medicaid, we don't see even 50%. If we have a Medicaid patient, we see less than 10% of what we charge.
In other words, many of the big providers like Medicare, Medicaid, and perhaps even the HMOs have a set price they're going to provide, and you can tell them it's $1,000, and they're going to give you $150 anyway. Is that about what happens?
What do you
So,
do?
yeah, in other words, the fee schedule has little correlation to the fees eventually collected.
Correct. A Medicare patient, if we transport at basic life support level, I believe we receive about $318. Regardless of what the charge is, that's what we're going to get paid. That's it.
That's it.
You don't go back to the individual then and ask
We
for-
cannot.
You do
Under
not.
Medicare, Medicaid, we are not allowed under federal and state law for us to receive that money in the first place.
Jason. That's what
We have to
Jason
take
was
what they
saying.
provide us.
Okay. Even if they have, now what if they have other insurance?
If there's a secondary insurance, they will pay the agreed upon amount. Usually with Medicare, it's a set amount. Even with a secondary payer, we cannot go after them for any remaining balance.
So I know that people get thinking that the fee schedules may change, but in fact, there's little relationship between the amount of reimbursement you receive compared to the fee schedule that's been established.
Correct.
And I think most doctors and so fee schedules really, what kind of EMS activities? Are you saying that the city would lose final say in whether you can have a chili supper? Are you saying?
Those things and
What kind
purchasing,
of activities are we talking
the
about?
purchasing of ambulances.
Pardon?
The purchasing of ambulances.
Purchasing
just
of ambulances.
our day-to-day activities. If the hospital were to own or control the ambulance service, they would be the ones
decide
making the
when
decisions
to
on
buy
how
a
to
new
proceed.
ambulance. Okay, which would seem perhaps realistic, that the person who's operating it should decide when it needs to be replaced or upgraded.
It'd also be personnel issue. I mean, all of those things that go along with running an ambulance service, they would fall back on the hospital if they're the ones providing the service, because it is their service that they're providing.
We only discussed Medicare and Medicaid patients though, but I can see fees being recouped by other costs to other patients.
The private insurances, as I said, do usually pay the fee. If you have an outrageous fee, they're not going to pay it though. They're going to say that's
Well, and customer.
outrageous and we're not going to pay it.
But
Right.
there are recourses at that point to go collect your money.
Any idea on what the split is between Medicare, Medicaid versus private insurance?
Not offhand.
Okay.
The majority of our patients are Medicare, Medicaid age. I mean, Medicare and Medicaid are the largest payers. My guess would be they are more than probably 50 to 60% of our payers.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, there's basically 6 different scenarios at hand. There's city continuing to offer EMS at current levels. There's city offering EMS at paramedic levels. There's hospital offering EMS at current, hospital offering it at paramedic only.
Hospital will, the
Paramedic
CEO
only.
has been very, very upfront saying that because they have a full-time staffing at the emergency room, they would, this would, and the
Definitely
real
paramedic.
need is in paramedic.
Okay.
Our service can't do some transfers for them now because we don't have that service.
Okay.
So they have to call others. So they would want to upgrade the service so that they could do the transfers that they currently can't.
And then there's also the nonprofit option potentially, that there could be a nonprofit, maybe not at current level, but paramedic level.
I think, Amy, the nonprofit only came up because the city had a nonprofit EMS status that was changed. There are some EMS services in the area that are nonprofit, but they've been nonprofit for quite some time. I think to go to a nonprofit would require probably, I would say, 3 to 5 year transition.
Okay, but that could theoretically be an option as well.
It could theoretically be an option. I'm not real sure what level of service. Certainly in the beginning, it would be, I would think, at best what we have now. Yeah.
Okay, so am I safe to say that if we proceed with the hospital evaluation, we're basically making an assumption that we want to go the paramedic level if we're going to have them spend that time? Is that sort of like a decision that's a standalone onto its own decision that we would need to make first? That we want to go paramedic? Has the city made that decision?
If you do though, wouldn't those have to be paid positions? They'd no longer be volunteer?
Yes,
There's so
as
much
I
involved
understand,
to
it's
be
a whole
paramedic.
package, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking, do we as a city want to go to the paramedic level of EMS?
I
don't think.
I don't know that that's the
Part of
question.
the conversation, yes.
Yeah, I think
I don't know that that's
It's
the
one or the other.
the
You either join the
conversation.
hospital or you don't join the
Right.
hospital.
And if we join the hospital, we're going paramedic.
Well, we don't do
We
anything.
aren't.
They
Well, the
make a
city's
decision.
EMS service would
No,
become paramedic
the
level.
region's PMA, there would be a regional service that
Okay.
had paramedic level service.
And they said that it wouldn't all be paramedics right off the
Right.
bat. They would get there eventually. There'd still be some volunteer
Sure.
EMS.
Right, because there aren't, I don't believe that many paramedic, probably trained individuals available to just
Right.
turn it over. I suppose there could be if you advertised in the region or something, but.
There are in the region. It would be, there's a process that has to be gone through, just like when we went from the EMT basic level to the advanced EMT. It is a process. It's submitting a feasibility plan, that being approved by the state, saying that yes, this is a feasible option. Then completing an operational plan, assembling all of our protocols, submitting that to the state, them reviewing it, and then them approving it, saying yes, everything's been met. We agree that the way it's written and the way that's been outlined to be run is adequate, and you've been granted permission to proceed to this level. So it may take up to a year to get all of that done. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings, and it's waiting for the state to review the plan and approve it.
But so theoretically, we could have the city be paramedic level or the hospital be paramedic level.
Yes.
Or we can have the city at the current level. But if we do hospital, it's only paramedic level, basically, eventually, right? Okay.
Well, they're not volunteers anymore.
Well,
We're
there
talking
may be,
taking on,
there may be volunteers yet.
Maybe some, but we would
Yeah,
need to
but
have
they-
full-time
right.
staff that get paid accordingly, yeah. So it's a lot more expensive to go paramedic level. That's sort of the summary of that. Expensive, whether it be to us or the hospital or whomever, right? Okay.
well, I personally do not want to be in the business of healthcare. If you read these proposals, you're saying you need nurses, you need doctors, you need, your ambulances have to be upgraded, the insurance levels change, and we have no guarantees on refunding. I think that's not the city's business. I think we've come to the point, like Eileen, our president, said, where we need to look at what our local hospital and healthcare providers can offer and move in that direction. I know volunteers on the EMS system that are now looking to retire, they're aging out, physically and age. And I don't think we can depend on the university students much longer, because they also have obligations. So anyway, that's my promotion here.
So, are people interested in continuing the conversation
Yes.
with the
I certainly
CEO to at least explore going forward? And so we would have to have a full discussion then with the hospital after that.
Can we more further, if we do that, is there a reason we're not exploring the nonprofit option in greater detail?
At this point, Amy, I think it came up very late in our discussions, and while we certainly could discuss that at some point, I think that the hospital or the existing system, the existing system is operating very well. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But again, the question is there a need, if it's not today, let's say tomorrow,
And we,
for a higher level?
right, and we know that there's a facility issue.
And we know
And
there's a facility issue,
so-
and so to think about going nonprofit, while I appreciate that, I guess, I would like to at least continue the discussion with the hospital. We may decide after having the final discussion that that's not the way to go, and at that point, then I think we come back and look at the nonprofit. But because we don't have anything in place for that, that's going to take some time to try to set up. And I
is-
don't know that that's the best option either. for
That's
the city.
beyond the scope of the city, is to set up a nonprofit. That's a whole nother ballgame.
No, I don't think we would set
And-
one up. I think that, do I understand that there could be nonprofits who already do this sort of thing that could come into our community, or how does that work usually?
The other ambulance services in the area that are not-for-profit are set up as not-for-profit corporations. They themselves are the ambulance provider.
Okay,
In
so you just
Lancaster,
take the current staffing and everything and apply for nonprofit status and
if
change your.
that's the direction the council chose to say that we're going at that time, then that's what would be done.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a third party coming in either. It'd basically be
Probably
the
not.
city again with a different business structure.
Well, it would be,
Oh, it would not be the
it wouldn't be
city.
the city. They
Well,
would-
it would be the same people theoretically.
Or not,
No, they
because
can
there
be
would not.
people from Madison or Dubuque or Minneapolis. They come in and make a RFP, just like all the other people we've been
Basically
talking
bid it
about.
out.
Yeah, just like the taxi service. No, I would prefer that we keep as much local and look at our local individuals through our local people. but I still don't want the city to be in the health providing business any longer. So I would make a motion that we continue
Can't have a
discussion.
motion, it's only information discussion,
Okay, well,
thank you
I
anyway,
removed
but
my motion, but I would recommend that we
yeah,
continue
recommend,
discussion.
okay, and I think at least Mike and Barbara saying go forward with the discussion. Again, it's not an obligation, Ken?
Discuss, I do have a
We
question.
been in discussion a little bit before, but Dan kind of backed away because of the new construction going on.
Right,
out
and the
there.
new construction now, as I understand it, is completed, and so he's willing, he's always been willing to discuss it, but yes, his priority was to get the building addition
But
done at the hospital.
I think that he wanted to know that there was consensus among the council that we should continue to discuss this, because they're going to incur costs as they develop a pro forma.
Right.
Have you discussed costs, looking at the paramedic hospital-based? What is the cost?
We don't
We talked
know.
about it way back when, and the number came up $200,000.
Yeah, we don't know, Ken.
So
Yes,
you-
you're right.
So you haven't discussed
No,
costs?
we have
lately?
not, no, we have not firmed up any numbers. We're,
So it looks to me like it's gonna be a subsidy for the hospital to do it.
well, I guess you could call it a subsidy, or you can say that if we, unless we continue to increase our volume every year and increase our revenue, by the time we build a new building and buy a third ambulance, I don't think that we're going to, I could be wrong, but I doubt that we'll be revenue neutral at that point. So,
But
and
if
other,
if it goes to the hospital, it sounds like we'll be supporting them partly for a long time.
well, we would be contracting with them for the service, yes. So
Oh.
that's
But
part of
why
what
aren't-
we need to
Okay,
discuss.
the question is, why aren't they providing the service? And we get out of it completely.
Well, that's the
Well-
discussion.
I don't know, maybe that's what we discuss with him when he comes back with his,
Why are we continuing to spend? If they're gonna take it over, let them take it over.
And
Well-
maybe that's, I mean, they haven't run the numbers.
right, so that's
So
what we need
that's
to
what
find out.
he wants to know, if we're interested in actually now getting serious about the numbers.
I guess, my instinct is telling me, and I haven't been involved in this conversation as long as everybody else at the table here, but my instinct's telling me if we're gonna have them run the numbers, I almost wonder if it wouldn't just be a good business practice for us to ask several different places to run numbers to see what it would cost to offer a service like this. If there are nonprofit models, and you guys did say that people would bid out the service to other agencies or cities or whatever, wouldn't it make sense that if we're gonna wait around for Southwest Health to run some numbers, why don't we do it for several agencies at once?
Well, we're not to that point yet.
But wouldn't we be to that point as soon as we get a number from Southwest Health? Because how are we gonna make a decision if we don't have a full?
That's the next question.
One thing, if you bid out like contracts, and nothing against Paramount or anything else, I'll just use them as an example. You have no control, they'll bill whatever they want to, okay? down
So
the
could the
road.
hospital?
Yes, but you're gonna negotiate with them.
You
if-
would with whoever you bid out to.
You would, but you have no control over what they wanna do and when they wanna do
Well,
it.
that's why you would theoretically develop a contract that would outline your
Well,
expectations.
That's why, they don't do that well in Dubuque.
Because they've had a crappy contract.
Well, let's move
I don't
on.
know.
I have a couple
I'm not an
subject
expert. I'm
on
just saying.
service.
If it comes to that, Amy, I think that, I understand your point. Right now, I think that, as somebody said, it's nice to stay local if we can. And so I think continuing the conversation at this point is beneficial. It doesn't mean that that will perhaps be the only one that we work with, but.
That outfit in Dubuque, they got hard rubber on their tires.
Thank you for that, Dick.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna move on.
Dick's written in there.
Okay, downtown
Oh,
parking
sorry,
time
Greg.
restriction
Hard
ordinance.
rubber.
I don't know who's going to take this one. Downtown parking restriction ordinance.
Okay, I'll start it, I guess.
All right,
At the August 12th meeting, not 11th, August 12th meeting, a business owner asked that the current 2-hour parking be extended to 3-hour parking in the downtown area. And additionally, the business owner asked that the citation be reduced from the current $20. Jack Ludke from the Main Street program asked the council to direct the staff to develop appropriate ordinances. It was my understanding that that was the direction from the council. So I've prepared ordinances for you to consider if in fact you want to consider them. There are 40 streets, signs on the streets in the downtown area that currently read the no parking 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. and 2-hour parking from 9 a.m. to 5:30. And those, you would basically change those to read 3-hour parking. We'd, in essence, put a little sticky on there, just put a little decal up there, changing the 2 to the 3. We do have 7 additional signs in parking lots that designate 2-hour parking, but are not included in the proposal. If you want us to include those, I can do that. The next motion for discussion talks about reduction of the forfeiture. So we'll get to that later. The business owner basically said that there are a lot of businesses and a lot of circumstances where a customer needs to be parked for longer than 2 hours, and either they need to interrupt their service, or they park further away, or they could receive a citation for violating that 2-hour parking rule, and in some cases they seek service elsewhere because they don't want to deal with the hassle. Quite frankly, the 2-hour parking ordinance is a compromise. What the idea here is, it's to allow maximum use of those prime parking spaces by customers with what is hopefully an appropriate turnover time. If you lengthen the time allowed to park and or reduce the forfeiture, the fine, it could in fact cause employees and tenants to take up those valuable parking stalls that could be used by customers. And they could make, the financial calculation that the chances of being ticketed are small, and even if they get a ticket, the fine isn't very much, and they'll just park there. My concern here is that if you do in fact change this to 3 hours, that in a couple of years, business owners will be talking about how their customers can't find parking spots, and you'll be asking me to take a razor blade to take those little stickies off, change them back to 2 hours. We can do this if you want. We have a request by a business owner. We have the request by the Main Street program based on their survey of the downtown businesses. I've proposed an ordinance if you want to consider it.
Howard, I'm sorry, are you through?
That's it.
I think that it would be a very good idea to extend that time to 3 hours. And as far as the part of employees parking in those stalls, then I don't see that as being a problem at all, because the people that own those businesses are definitely going to school their employees and not have them parking in their parking stalls where their customers would park. So that I don't think is going to happen. Maybe some tenants or something, that's a possibility. But I don't see employees employees of the businesses taking advantage of that and parking their vehicles there. I just believe that the people that own those businesses are not going to allow it. My opinion.
Ken?
I think these two things are in conflict. I would favor changing the 3 hours, but not changing the fine. I'm assuming that they felt that 3 hours was long enough as far as shopping. So that if 3 hours is long enough, then they should be able to move their vehicles and not get a fine.
Okay.
So I'd leave the fine at $20 and that'll give incentive to move the vehicles at 3 hours or less.
I agree with you, Ken. I don't believe we should change the fines whatsoever. They should stay at the $20 mark.
And that's obviously the next one, the downtown parking citation, which Howard referenced, and so everybody's already seen it in their packet. But yes, the proposal was to change it from 20, I believe, to 10, or maybe even 5, someone had suggested. So that will be the other part of what we will discuss next time.
Sorry.
If you want to give guidance.
If you have no desire to consider the second ordinance, it doesn't have to be before you again.
Good.
I don't care to see it again, yeah.
I don't care to see it again.
I agree, just go with the 3 hours and don't bring the other one back.
Okay.
But I have one more question about the 3-hour one. Howard, you said you're gonna put stickers over the time change, or are you actually gonna put new signs up? And if so, how much would that cost to change all these signs just because somebody asked us to?
We have the ability, we have the laminating material that we put on the signs.
Yep.
And what we would end up doing is we would just make the small little patches of the same laminated material that say 3 and just put it over top rather than replacing the sign. We
Okay.
would replace the sign when the signs are required to be replaced in their normal rotation. I would not want to replace those signs. We're talking $40, $50 per sign if we were having to replace the sign itself, the whole sign.
And that doesn't
But that's-
count the labor.
And, yeah,
Yeah.
so to me, the most cost-effective would be to just have the little square of the material that we just stick over top of it.
Okay. One more question, and humor me here. I'm trying to think of what businesses take more than 2 hours on Main Street. What type of business? Just any ideas?
Hairdressers,
Hairdressers?
Yeah.
you go cut, curl, and perm, you'll never get it done in 2 hours.
There's the quote of the year. Quote of the year.
Absolutely, I know.
Girls. No, I think we need to look at the businesses on Main Street. And if you started one business, you should be shopping downtown, not just start with one business. That's the point of Main Street. And you
Well,
can't
and
do it in 1 hour.
Howard brought up a good point, though. The reason there's 2-hour parking limits on most Main Street is so that you prompt turnover, so you can get as many people as possible to shop on Main Street in a given day, right? That's theoretically the goal. That's why most communities have a 2-hour limit. So I'll just point that out, that it is kind of a slippery slope, that the longer you let people park, the less access to parking there is on Main Street for more customers, theoretically. Our Main Street's not exactly always, there are hours in the day where it's super busy, but there's often times where it's not, so.
Stop into the law office for a while, then you run up to the jewelry store to get something for your sweetie and get a haircut. You can't make it.
Right, and then you can't stop at 3 other stores in between.
All right, I think we've covered this one. One is being brought back, not the citation change.
Okay.
Revenue ideas, researched information. There's information in the packet from the city manager regarding a request to look at other revenue sources. To me, that's something that we will be looking at during the budget process. And speaking of the budget process, we had polled, the city clerk had polled all the council people about a date to hold a budget session, and the date that works for everyone is October 6th, and it will be at 5 p.m., and it will be in the police meeting room, I believe. Is that right, Larry?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously, we get the budget itself on the 23rd
Is
of
it the 5th
September.
or the 6th?
The 6th, I think.
Yep,
Monday.
Monday the 6th?
5 plus 1?
Monday.
5 o'clock on October 6th. And we get the budget on the 23rd of September. That gives you some time to read it over before we hold our first budget session. Department heads are invited to attend that, so we will have them available also if you have questions. So I know that's a whole month away, but the way the summer's going, it's
Who's bringing
probably
subs?
not that far.
Who's bringing subs?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll figure that out.
Eat before you come.
Okay.
Any questions?
Eat at noon and that's it.
Is that when we can ask about 40 hours?
Yeah.
So then, there is no meeting
If there
on
are
the
no, I'm sorry,
So there is no meeting on the 7th, then,
on the 7th of
October. There's no.
October, no. We had tried for the 7th, that did not work for other people,
Okay.
so we have changed that to the 6th of October.
Okay.
Sorry if there's any confusion on that, we are not meeting on the 7th.
Yes.
All right. Next item, we need a motion to go into closed session.
So move.
Second?
According to Parent, 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties The investing of public funds or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Consider the purchase of downtown properties.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Den,
Yes,
Doss,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes,
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
motion carries.
We'll take about a 3-minute recess here, guys.
Three.
Need to have a
That takes me
need to have a little recess.